Have you ever felt broken, even when everything in your life seemed perfectly fine? Like there's a void inside you, a space no one else can ever fill. The truth is that emptiness you try to hide every day might have nothing to do with what's happening right now. Maybe it goes way back. Carl Jung believed that inside every adult, there's still a child. Not just a metaphor, but a real, living part of your psyche. A child that carries fear, loneliness, and a pain that's never been heard. What if the reason you feel insecure in relationships, silently anxious, or emotionally drained is because that child is still waiting to be seen? In this video, you'll discover why true self-love only begins when we finally turn inward and listen to the part of us we've long forgotten. Stay until the end, because I'm going to reveal a key principle from analytical psychology that could change the way you love, connect, and most importantly, how you see yourself. And if this message already resonates with you, subscribe and hit the bell so YouTube knows you want more content like this and your healing journey can continue. Let's begin. From a young age, we're taught to adapt, to be strong, not to cry in public, to keep moving as if nothing ever happened. But every time we hide our pain, we leave a part of ourselves behind. The child you once were never really disappeared. They're still inside you, waiting for something they may have never received: understanding, protection, or simply to be seen. Carl Jung called this the inner child, a living fragment of your essence that continues to shape the way you love, trust, and navigate the world. Maybe you think you've moved on from the past, but then why do you keep attracting the same kind of relationships? Why is it so hard to say no? Why does it feel like, no matter how much you achieve, something is still missing? These aren't coincidences. They're emotional patterns, echoes from a childhood that left marks, even if you can't clearly remember them. And here's the most important part. Ignoring those signs doesn't make them go away. In fact, it gives them more power, letting them silently control your life. Today, we'll explore how recognizing and healing your inner child can be the turning point between living in reaction and living with awareness. And if you feel like there's still something inside you waiting to be embraced, and this video is for you, so go ahead and subscribe now and turn on the notifications because your journey of self-discovery is just beginning. By the way, which part of you is still waiting to be heard? When we talk about the inner child, many people imagine something symbolic, almost poetic, but it's much more real than you think. This silent, invisible part of you directly influences how you feel when you wake up, how you react to rejection, and even the decisions you make without realizing it. Let's be honest. Have you ever found yourself repeating patterns in your relationships? Maybe constantly trying to prove your worth to feel loved. We're always saying yes to avoid conflict, even when it hurts you deeply. Those reactions didn't just appear out of nowhere. They come from deep roots, almost always tied to how you learned to survive emotionally as a child. Back then, you had no control over what happened. All you could do was adapt. And in order to survive, maybe you had to hide parts of who you really were, your sensitivity, your anger, your truth. And so you created masks, built defenses, started believing you had to be something in order to deserve love. That's when the inner child begins to fracture. It holds memories you may not consciously recall, but your heart and body never forgot. The absence of affection, the critical gaze, the silence when you needed words. All of it built the foundation of how you see yourself today. Here's the real issue. Most of us try to move past this with sheer willpower. We go to therapy, read books, push ourselves to grow, but deep down, we ignore that small piece inside us that's still frozen in time. Carl Jung said, "What we do not make conscious, we will live as fate." In other words, if we don't face what's hurting us, we'll keep repeating the same storylines, just with different characters. Why does this happen? Because your unconscious is trying to recreate the original scenario, hoping that this time it will end differently. That love will come, that validation will arrive, that you'll finally feel complete. But it never happens out there. Because the healing doesn't come from others, it starts when you decide to become that other for yourself. Now, take a breath and ask yourself, when do you feel like the pain you're experiencing is too big for the adult you are? Maybe it's when someone doesn't reply to a message and you spiral. Maybe it's when someone criticizes you and you collapse internally, or when you mess up and treat yourself as if failure is unforgivable. These are not overreactions. These are your inner child saying, I'm still here and I'm still afraid. And the only way to heal is to listen. But listening takes courage. It means quieting the outside noise and paying attention to what's going on within. Have you ever asked yourself, which part of me is speaking right now? Often, it's not the adult. It's the boy who had to grow up too fast, the girl who learned she must never be a burden. When you realize that, the magic begins, because you stop judging yourself and start understanding yourself. This isn't about blaming your parents or falling into victimhood. It's about owning the fact that you now have the responsibility and the power to change how you relate to your pain. And that's the first real step toward healing. Becoming the adult who cares for the child. And it's not just a poetic metaphor. It's a real, grounded, and transformative practice. Imagine looking into that child's eyes inside you and saying, I'm here now, and I'll protect you. That one sentence can begin to unravel years of emotional abandonment in just seconds of reconnection. From there, every act of kindness, every healthy boundary, every time you respect yourself, becomes a way of saying, you matter. And when that child begins to feel safe, something extraordinary happens. Your anxiety softens, the fear of rejection fades, your self-worth blooms, not as a concept, but as a lived inner reality. You start feeling at home within yourself. And that's where transformation begins. One of the biggest mistakes we make in healing is believing it has to be fast. But healing the inner child isn't about speed, it's about presence. That child inside you isn't asking for a quick fix. They're asking for something far more rare. Patience. Think about how many years that part of you has been ignored, silenced, dismissed. You can't just leap over that pain with positive affirmations or motivational quotes. You have to learn how to live with it. And that takes daily choices, small steps, and, most of all, a new perspective. Let's talk about one of those steps. One of the most powerful ways to care for your inner child is through compassionate inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself matters more than you think. Every insult you tell yourself, every harsh judgment, every impossible standard is heard by that child. And they believe every word. Carl Jung reminded us that the unconscious doesn't distinguish past from present. So when you speak to yourself with cruelty today, it's as if you're repeating the same pain you lived years ago. That's why changing your inner voice is one of the deepest acts of love you can offer yourself. When you make a mistake, instead of saying, I'm a failure, try saying, I'm learning, and this is part of the process. Would you talk to a scared child the way you talk to yourself? If the answer is no, maybe it's time to change your tone. Another key step is setting healthy boundaries. So many people with childhood wounds are terrified of saying no, of disappointing others, of being seen as selfish. Because somewhere along the way, they learned that love had to be earned, that you had to be helpful, pleasant, constantly available. But here's the truth. Real love respects limits. And every time you stand your ground without aggression, you're telling your inner child, you're safe now. I'm here to protect us. And that changes everything. Your posture shifts, your relationships evolve. You stop accepting crumbs and start choosing what actually feeds your soul. And now, let's talk about something that's rarely mentioned. Joy also heals. Your inner child isn't made of just pain. They are also curiosity, creativity, wonder. But growing up, you may have abandoned those parts of yourself in the name of productivity, maturity, seriousness. So let me ask, when was the last time you did something just for fun? No outcome, no approval, no productivity required. Play, paint, dance, sing off-key, laugh at silly things. These are not childish acts. They're medicine. Because when you allow yourself to feel joy again, you're telling your inner child, you're no longer stuck in pain. You can play now, safely. That's a turning point. You stop being a wounded adult and start becoming a whole one. Not perfect, not finished, but whole. And that is freedom. Now, maybe you're wondering, what if I do all this and still feel pain? That is the most beautiful and the most honest part of this journey. You will feel it, because healing doesn't mean erasing pain. It means learning to walk with it, without letting it control you. It's like a scar. It's there. But it doesn't hurt anymore. It tells a story and proves that you survived. Working with your inner child is exactly that. Remembering you've already lived through the worst. And now you get to choose differently. You no longer have to earn love. You don't have to stay silent to be accepted. You don't have to hide who you are to feel safe. All you have to do is be who you are, with courage, with kindness, with truth, and with every step in that direction. You become your own home. There's one more layer to this journey, one that often goes unnoticed. The patterns we repeat aren't just habits, they're survival strategies. Think about it. If you keep ending up in relationships where you're not seen or valued, maybe deep down, your inner child is trying to relive something familiar. Not because it's healthy, but because it's known. And to the unconscious, familiarity feels like safety, even if it hurts. That's why breaking these patterns isn't just about thinking differently. It's about seeing the truth beneath your reactions. The next time you feel abandoned, instead of blaming the moment, ask yourself, where have I felt this before? The next time you bend over backward for someone, ask, am I doing this out of love or fear of being left? Awareness is the beginning of freedom. Because once you name the wound, it loses the power to run your life in the dark. Now let's talk about one final practice that's often overlooked, but deeply healing. Reconnecting with joy through creativity. Your inner child doesn't need you to be productive. They need you to be present. You don't need to be an artist. You don't need a plan. You just need to give yourself permission to create. Draw with no purpose. Journal without editing. Dance in your room with the music loud. Let go of needing it to be good. Just let it be real. Every act of creation is a whisper to your inner child. You're free now. It's safe to come out. And finally, remember this. Healing is not linear. Some days, you'll feel whole. Other days, your old wounds will resurface. But that's not failure. That's depth. You're not going backward. You're going deeper. Because every time you pause, listen, and respond with love, instead of self-rejection, you build a relationship with yourself that is unshakable. Carl Jung believed that integration, embracing every part of who we are, is the key to becoming whole. Zen Buddhism teaches that true peace doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from allowing ourselves to fully be, without judgment, without resistance. And when you give your inner child the space to speak, to feel, to play, to rest, you'll realize something profound. The peace you've been searching for outside was always inside of you. And now you're finally ready to come home to yourself. So now you know, healing your inner child is not a quick fix. It's not a trend. It's a lifetime commitment, a quiet revolution within yourself. But what if, even after doing all this, you still find yourself falling into self-doubt, still needing others to tell you that you're enough? That reveals the next layer. Because healing isn't just emotional, it's also psychological conditioning. And until we shift the beliefs wired into our nervous system, we stay trapped in cycles of pain. no matter how much we understand ourselves. And that is exactly what we'll explore next. So don't stop here. The next video that shows up on your screen might hold the exact key you've been missing. Watch it. Every video you choose, every insight you absorb, is another step toward becoming the person your inner child always needed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.